In local matters, Michigan is giving all voters a chance to vote by mail in upcoming elections. On Tuesday, Michigan's Secretary of State said all registered voters will get applications to vote by mail in August's primaries and November's general elections. It comes after a surge of Michigan voters mailed in ballots for the presidential primary in March. That was before the state even had a confirmed case of COVID-19. Michigan is also taking steps to restart the nation's auto industry. On Monday, thousands of auto workers went back to work for the first time in 8 weeks. General Motors, Ford Motor Company, and Fiat Chrysler have all reopened their plants. The companies say they are rolling out new safety protocols modeled after ones used in manufacturing plants in China and Europe. Earlier, my colleague Lana Zach spoke with Henry Payne, an auto columnist for the Detroit News.
So as auto manufacturing is opening back up, tell us what new safety protocols have been put into place to protect the workers there.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's actually not that new to us here in the Midwest. Manufacturing has been up and running in a lot of these auto plants for the last couple of months because a lot of the plants switched over to making ventilators and other medical devices. So I think there's a lot of experience here with how to make the workplace safe. What the workers do when they come into the plants is they don gloves and masks, and in the case of Ford, they actually put on wristwatches that beep if they get within 6 feet of one another. So it's a pretty controlled environment.
That's very interesting. And while the number of new coronavirus cases have been on the decline in Michigan, the state did report over 700 new cases on Monday. How do auto workers feel about being one of the first industries to go back to work, noting, as you said, that many manufacturing plants have continued to remain open during the coronavirus?
Yeah, a lot of the workers who are going into these plants by the hundreds. Rawsonville is one of them here in the Detroit area that the president's going to visit tomorrow, Thursday, I believe. Those workers are all volunteers, so it's the first time that the larger workforce has come in, and I think there's nervousness, as you would expect from folks. It's a new situation, but again, manufacturing is, by its nature, is a pretty spaced out profession. Workers generally don't work shoulder to shoulder. They work out spaced on the line. So it's a pretty safe environment to begin with.
And so other than keeping people safe, what are some of the other challenges that these auto companies and manufacturing companies are facing there in Michigan?
Well, it's an incredible symphony to put out a car. It's the most expensive consumer product we make in this country, and it depends on literally tens of thousands of parts all coming into one place on an assembly line on a very coordinated basis. So there's a lot of challenges here as far as supply chains go, and I think the auto companies are just going to take that as it comes. The Mercedes plant down in Alabama opened earlier than the Detroit plants here, and they've had some supply issues. So that's going to be an ongoing issue, I think.
And Henry, as you are well aware, the auto industry was not included in the House Democrats' recent $3 trillion stimulus plan. What are lawmakers in Michigan saying about this, and what do they want from any future relief packages?
Yeah, it's a tricky dance because lawmakers obviously, when they represent their constituents, they want to be aggressive and try to get their piece as Washington doles out billions of dollars. But on the other hand, two of these three Detroit companies went through bailouts just a decade ago. And so the auto companies themselves are very shy of the appearance that they're asking for more money from Washington, D.C. So, I think they're kind of letting the lawmakers lobby behind the scenes, but you're going to hear very little from the automakers about money from Washington this go-round.
Oh, that's very interesting. Well, also, as you mentioned, Henry, President Trump is scheduled to tour a Ford plant in Ypsilanti, Michigan on Thursday. Today, the president said that he would actually consider wearing a mask during his upcoming visit. You're a political cartoonist as well, and you've been critical of, shall I call it, the mask culture. Do you think that President Trump should wear a mask when he comes into Michigan?
Yeah, I think the whole presidential appearance thing is interesting. You go back to World War II, and Roosevelt and photographers were very shy about showing Roosevelt's infirmity. He couldn't walk at the time because there was a general sense that a president should project strength in a crisis. So I get why Trump is so resistant to wearing a mask. I suspect there'll be a lot of discussions with Ford here when he comes in as to where it's appropriate to wear a mask, where it's not appropriate to wear a mask. We'll see how that turns out. Again, there's been high-profile people in these plants already. Vice President Pence has been in a plant out here, and Bill Ford Jr., who's the chairman of Ford Motor Company, was in this same plant just at the end of last month. So I think they're familiar with high-profile people coming in. So I think there's a protocol for everything.
All right. Well, can you explain to our viewers why the president is going to Ypsilanti specifically, and some more about what's interesting about his visit?
Yeah, so it's really been extraordinary out here. These plants are very sophisticated in terms of their ability to bring together supply chains. That's what they do. They're the best in the world at it. And so you've seen these plants convert almost overnight from making automobiles to making medical devices. And I think this Rawsonville plant that the president's going to visit on Thursday has churned out 50,000 ventilators in just the last 2 months. Partnering with a ventilator company in order to do that. And so I think we call it out here, we call it the arsenal of health as a reference to the World War II arsenal of democracy, when so much of the U.S. auto industry converted to making trucks and bombers for the World War II effort. And there's been a similar effort up here to not just these big Detroit 3 automakers, but a lot of suppliers in the area. So I think it's a chance to celebrate how nimble manufacturing is in the Midwest.
Well, yes, and we are certainly grateful to all of those soldiers of health working in manufacturing there in Michigan. Henry Payne, thank you for joining us.